Hello, property nomads. Hope you're well. Some great news or interesting news coming out of the world this week. This video is going to go into that. We're going to be looking at all these wildfires going on in Canada, but also a warning that's come from the Exxon CEO, warning about overemphasis on renewables and how that will backfire. And it just so happens that that's coincided with some disastrous things we're seeing across the North American continent at the moment and how that's impacting solar energy. As usual, please do take time to press that bell below in order to get notifications when new videos come up. We're going to push towards Monday to Friday episodes, produce more video content for you, and try and keep a bit more on top of current events and giving our opinions and so forth. And also, please do take the time to like the channel and also share the channel with as many people as possible. As always, our message is fighting against the narrative that we're all being fed, and to give you truthful and honest news and our take on things moving forward. So ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods has come out today and said that companies need to stop focusing on certain energy sources, such as renewable energies, in order to save the climate. Now you're thinking, well, Rob, yeah, of course he would say that. Exxon are big on oil and gas, and they're going to want to have these methods moving forwards because they've got to make profits for their shareholders, and that's perfectly understandable. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But what Darren Woods is saying is that by having too much over emphasis on solar and wind turbines, etc., it's quite dangerous because you need to have that level of base energy. What solar and wind energy won't do is they will not produce a safe and solid base energy level. I'd recommend you check out the Macro Voices podcast with Eric Townsend. He is brilliant at explaining that, so go and check that out. But we've got to understand here that, okay, yes, he's the Exxon CEO. Yes, I understand why he would be saying that, but he's also got a point, because putting too much emphasis onto solar, wind, etc., is not good. And that brings us on to Canada. Let's go over to Canada. Lots of wildfires this week started in Canada. Now that means that air quality for Canada at the moment is quite poor. It's a lot of haze. I'm sure you've all seen the photos online. That is now trickling down into a lot of the USA. I've even read reports, some of it's coming over the Atlantic as well, which isn't good. But interestingly, what has happened on the eastern side of the US, solar power generation has gone down by over 50% because of these wildfires. Now, okay, that's not great because of the amount of light pollution and air pollution there is as a result of these wildfires. That means solar production, again, in certain parts has gone down by 50%. Now, if you're trying to run the world and you're trying to power as many people as possible, and we're getting all these wildfires, it's not just Canada, but you get all these, wildfires, Australia, other parts of the world as well. Well, if that's then going to stop the solar production, what's going to happen there? That could result in power outages. It could result in the grid becoming getting turned off, possibly. I don't know. All of these things could happen. So yes, I did see a few memes around going, blame Canada. If you've ever seen South Park, you'll get the reference. But the point being, and the critical point here, is if you have your baseload energy and it's solar and wind, well, what if the sun's not out? Or what if there's a lot of pollution, as there is at the moment, because of these wildfires? What if there's no wind? You're not going to generate anything. This is where the argument for nuclear comes in. Nuclear will provide you that clean base energy, and companies and countries are now starting to, I think they're starting to understand that. And that's possibly me trying to be hopeful rather than too optimistic, but fun times. anyway, back to this article on Zero Hedge for Darren Woods. Basically said an attempt to move away from oil and gas immediately with unchanged global demand could be disastrous for clean energy. Said that if they produce less LNG, liquefied bits and bobs, for example, something else like coal would have to step in to fill the demand gap. Absolutely. Darren Woods is talking a lot of sense here. If we're going to make a transition over to cleaner energy, again, wind, solar, etc., I'm not going to sit here and say, well, it's impossible, it's not going to happen. I'm saying that, yes, I understand where people are coming from. Okay, that's fine. But then let's just not go cold turkey and go from A to B. It doesn't work like that. There needs to be a transition phase, transition processes. These things don't happen overnight. Where they find the finance of this, it beats me. It's just a print. So I agree with what Mr. Woods is saying, that these things are going to take time. Yes, we should all look at this stuff. Absolutely, of course. Should we invest in it and whatnot? Of course, absolutely. We should all look at this. But what we've got to do is that he's come out with these comments and people are going to shoot down Exxon. They're going to go, well, you just care about oil and gas and your shareholders, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. He's got a fiduciary requirement to make sure that the shareholders are getting looked after. He's also got to ensure that Exxon are one step ahead of the game. So don't shoot him down for saying that, because what he's saying is true. That to go from A to B, yes, absolutely, we can do that, but it's not going to happen overnight. These things are going to take time, and we just need a bit of patience from everyone. Nothing's perfect. No one's perfect. But ultimately, to get this baseload energy that we need around the world, if you want to get rid of oil, gas, or certainly use less of it, then nuclear is going to be the answer. Nuclear is the way to get that baseload energy sorted. And again, that doesn't help when countries like Germany are closing down nuclear plants. Oddly, their coal usage has been through the roof since their crazy ass energy policies haven't quite worked out. We know better. Try and get a nuclear plant on these shores in the UK, and everyone's always up in arms about that. It's absolutely crazy. And again, I think that's the eco people. You always feel like you're never going to win with these eco people. So yes, ExxonMobil chiefs come out and said, hey, hang on a minute, overemphasis on renewables will backfire. I completely agree. We completely agree with that. And then with all these wildfires that have been going on in Canada this week, and the fact that solar power generation in parts of the eastern US, because again, that air pollution has got worse because that's what the way the wind's blowing with all these wildfires, solar generation's down by 50% in some parts. And if you're trying to run a planet of 7-8 billion people and you're going to be overemphasizing your solar and wind, well, again, what if there are wildfires? What if the wind isn't blowing? Is the grid going to have to sell, etc.? We've got to think about these things and realize that in certain aspects, wind, solar, etc., they are good. Are they cleaner and greener? That's not a conversation for this video, because how you get to build a solar panel is quite environmentally destructive. But again, the ecos and the greens don't want to tell you this. They don't believe that that's the case. So yeah, sure, we can all blame Canada. Unlucky Canada, we're all going to blame you. Solar power usage down in the eastern US because of all these wildfires, and also ExxonMobil chief saying that too much overemphasis on renewables will backfire. We completely agree with this stance. We've got to take it easy. We've all got to work to the common goal, and we've got to share the knowledge. We've got to share the understanding that all this disinformation and misinformation that's just being forced upon us is being regurgitated by our wonderful media outlets. We've got to listen to the capitalists. We've got to understand that if we want to get from A to B, it is possible, but how we get from A to B isn't exactly going to be linear. We might have to take one step back before we take 2 steps forward. That's life. It is what it is. See you in the next video.